Welcome to Education in Focus. I'm your host, Eliana Kernodle. A federal judge is allowing a class action lawsuit against the Chicago Public Schools Board of Education over its use of the Quiet Time program. Joining me to tell us more is Chalkboard News editor Brendan Clary. Brendan, you've reported on this program before, but can you refresh our memories? What is the Quiet Time program?
Yes. So the Quiet Time program was from the David Lynch Foundation. And I believe David Lynch is like a director. He's a Hollywood, and there's a lot of, if you go back and this is part of the court records, like in the court documents, you see a lot of testimonials from Hollywood figures, like Ellen DeGeneres is on there. I think Hugh Jackman also has like a testimonial about like the Quiet Time program. Essentially, it's transcendental meditation is what it is. And it's supposed to be sort of a non-affiliated stress relieving sort of thing. And that's kind of how it's billed. These Hollywood actors, directors, I think Martin Scorsese has like a testimonial as well. These are different things that the have been provided in court documents to try to establish, okay, this is what it is, this is what it's purporting to do. And so then part of that, this is kind of the backstory there, is the David Lynch Foundation said, we're going to try to expand this into schools because we see a lot of the fighting, a lot of the violence in these schools, some of them, in urban areas. What if we got them some transcendental meditation and help them de-stress? Wouldn't that help solve some of these like interpersonal problems that we're seeing? And so they partnered with the University of Chicago to implement this in 8 schools in Chicago public schools. So that's sort of the background of this. And particularly in this case, a student, Kaya Hudgens, said, I went to Chicago public schools. I went to Bogan High School during my sophomore and junior years, and essentially took part of this Quiet Time program at Bogan High School. And so essentially, the Hudgens said, a teacher told me to sign a consent form to participate in this, and they felt like they were pressured into it. Student was 15 at the time. And then somebody from the David Lynch Foundation had them sign like a non-disclosure agreement, which again, we're starting to get into like sort of some kind of weird things here. Somebody outside the school is there, and the school paid for this. So this was like $42,000, I think, every semester or something like that. I think like if there were 4 semesters, then this would be a recurring payment to the David Lynch Foundation for these services, right? This was like a partnership that was paid for with taxpayer dollars. So just wanted to kind of bring that up there. That's part of the, that's in the complaint as well. It's like, this is the agreement that they had. And so essentially, instructor would take students out of the classroom and bring them into like a darkened room for like a ceremony. And so that's something I wrote about last fall. And I think we talked about, on Education in Focus here. But, these students were concerned about sort of this religious aspect to the ceremony, where there's like a table that has like some things on it. I mean, it's a dark room, and there's like a table, I think, with like candles, and then a man dressed like a Hindu priest. And then they're told, to chant something or given a mantra. But then, kind of looking into it, and they were told, don't tell anybody this. This is your personal mantra. And then, of course, they did, because, they're high school students. So they were like talking to their friends about it, and started Googling it, and then realized that they were Hindu gods, that these were the names of these. And so sort of like this reaction of like, okay, like this was billed as like a non-religious sort of thing. But here we are getting, these students are saying, okay, like there's this religious sort of aspect to it. And also we felt like compelled, to do this. Like this was at school, and they were told that not participating would negatively affect their grades. So there's sort of like this compulsion aspect there. So that's, in short, that's a little bit about the program and some of the concerns that were flagged. And so then essentially the court case against the Board of Education for the Chicago Public Schools saying, this was forced participation in a religion violates, constitutional rights to be free of that. So essentially, I think that's the argument. And the school district denies those kinds of claims and says that there was not that harm and has never taken any kind of responsibility for that.
Yeah, so this latest court ruling kind of follows the Board of Education's opposition to the case that Hudgens is bringing. What was their opposition, and how did the court respond to that? Yeah,
so in this most recent ruling that I wrote about was that the judge said, okay, this student and those similarly situated who went to these schools that were affected by the Quiet Time program, they can file a class action lawsuit. And so part of that is establishing what is a class, like who is able to join that and sue the school kind of together, right? And so that's, we hear about that in the news, right? A class action lawsuit against, this company for something. So that there's a very specific sort of body of law about like what constitutes a class and what can be, who can join that. And so that was the school district basically said that the students' definition of the class was too broad, and the court said, no, that's not true. Like you can kind of see where the possible harm is. And so basically the court ruled, hey, those who attended these schools with these years, between like 2015 and 2019, I believe, and who turned 18 before January in 2021, those are the class. They define the class there, and they said that is allowed to proceed. So that's sort of the big news there. Also, the Board of Education kind of went after the student, and the court called him out essentially and said, and this is through their attorneys. But the Chicago Public Schools Board of Education was bordering on attempted character assassination. And so that's a quote from the opinion from the judge's order. So, they were trying to undermine the student's credibility and her adequacy to represent the class in this litigation. Again, that's a quote from the judge there who ruled on that. So it's just an interesting, there's some legal terms there and some legal aspects, but still it's very illustrative of what's being argued here against the school in terms of constitutional harms.
So briefly, what should we expect going forward?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty good sign for Hudgens, right? Because it signals, okay, she has something, not only her, but other people who are similarly situated have legal standing, so she can represent these other students who are in this situation. So I think that for the school board, essentially, this is maybe a concerning thing, because they have denied any liability, and they said, we've stopped doing this, and they have stopped doing this program, and they've not taken any responsibility for this, and they've never had like there was a settlement last year, which they entered into a judgment, I think, which is not quite the same as like a settlement. It's not quite the same as like there's not like a fault that's placed on the school district there. So they haven't had anything that said, okay, they violated students' constitutional rights. But I think that this is going to be interesting to see what happens in the court in terms of how many students join on to that. And, if they can continue to keep showing that like their constitutional rights were violated by the school. This is sort of foreboding for the school district, I think, because it establishes, that there were these students here, they can continue to go forward against the school district with these claims, right, that my rights were violated as alleged in the complaint by Kyer Hudgens.
Well, thank you, Brendan. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at chalkboardnews.com.
Some people would call him a loser. He ran for state office. He was beaten. He started a business. He failed. He ran for Congress. He lost. He was nominated for vice president. He lost again. But he knew only those who never tried are the real losers. And Abraham Lincoln was no loser. Persistence. Pass it on. From the Foundation for a Better Life at values.com.